live streaming and recording as of now. So blue light means we are recording, blue light means we're recording, red light means that we're not. So just be careful with what you say to your neighbor. If you don't want it recorded, please don't mention it. For Julie, wait until she asks questions before you interrupt, and feel free to ask any questions you have. Just raise your hand. We do have an hour in this room. Once we're done, I will put the recorded version up on our Blackboard site. It's on HR/professional development. And give me till probably the first of next week to have that up and running. I have to always trim and kind of do some modifications to the videos. But I'm going to hand it over to Julie to go through some financial aid information, and hopefully we will learn a lot today. Thank you.
Thank you, Deja. Thank you all for coming. This is my first professional development presentation, and I'm super excited about it. I've been thinking about it for days. What I wanted to present to you and what I wanted you to walk away with. There are some envelopes in front of you. You just leave those until the end. It's a little tidbit that I want you to walk away with, today, aside of the financial aid information that I'm going to give to you. I'm going to start off my presentation with telling you just a little story that's going to carry us through all the information that I'm going to give to you today to the end, and give you something to take back, to the office, and something that you can share with the Central Carolina Community College staff, campus-wide. When I was developing, what I wanted to share with you first, because I panicked, I wanted to make sure that you learned financial aid, but also that you kind of got a little bit about about us personally in financial aid, how we feel about the community college and about what we do and how it impacts, other students. So so it kind of humanizes us, a little bit, instead of just a voice on the other end of the line. A woman was sitting in an airport one night. She had several long hours before her flight, and she was hunting for a place, to sit. She hunted for a book in the bookstore shop, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place, and that's where she stayed. She was so engrossed in her book, but she happened to see the man sitting next to her, as bold as he could be, grab a cookie or two from the bag that she put on the seat between them. She grabbed a cookie, watched him eat a cookie, and the more she watched him eat, the madder she got. With each cookie he took one too, and when there was only one left, she wondered what he would do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, this guy has some nerve, he is rude, doesn't even show any gratitude. She had not known when she had been so galled, and sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed to the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane, sank in her seat, and she sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she grasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned in despair, the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, and the thief. So I thought that because what we do has a domino effect on everybody, sometimes we don't understand that what somebody's doing, we don't get a clear perception, of what the other person's doing and how it affects each of us. And I want everybody to be aware that we do need to collaborate. We do need to communicate. We do need to have compassion and empathy and understanding and provide grace for each other. If above anything else that we do at this college, while we're working through the financial aid processes, the registrar, student success, human resources, that's what we need to do, is to come together and communicate and collaborate, just work with each other. So that being said, I'll move on to my financial aid presentation. Oh my gosh, and I forgot one thing. I didn't get to pick the name of this, Navigating the Financial Aid Waters. I was forced into it by my superiors, and that's okay. So I did everything. I've never been on a boat much. So I went and bought a blue dress so I'd fit the part. I wore my Old Navy cologne, women's cologne, and I got a hat that I'm gonna wear just for you guys. So I can be sure that I'm commandeering this ship as appropriately as I can.
Make sure you step into the recorded video version.
Is that,
There you go. I gotta get that.
in my hair? Okay. Okay, so we're on a ship. I'm going to be your captain for a little bit. I'm not sure if you're going to throw me overboard or there's going to be a mutiny, but we're going to try and get through this. We're going to navigate the financial aid waters today. So thank you for coming and participating. So here's our agenda. We're going to talk about the types of aid that is available, the financial aid process, the FAFSA process, the internal financial aid processes, eligibility, communication management, and satisfactory academic progress. There are several different types of aid. Pell, which is awarded based upon the family's expected family contribution, the cost of attendance, enrollment status. And the amount for Pell for full-time students, which is 12 credit hours or more, is $5,775 for the academic year. FSEOG is another type of aid, and it's for students with the most financial need. Not necessarily the lowest EFC, but the most financial need. There's state aid, which is the North Carolina Community College Grant and the North Carolina Education Lottery Scholarship. And it's available for students who are attending 6 credit hours or more in our legal North Carolina residents. And then the federal work study funds are also federal Pell funds that have a little bit of a different criteria to be eligible for federal. You do have to be eligible for federal Pell, but you don't have to be receiving it. So in order to be eligible for federal work study funds, you have to be maintaining SAP. They're funds that you don't have to pay back. And it's designed to help students work their way through college with a little bit of extra income. And then scholarships and institutional funds, those are your foundation scholarships. There are need-based or merit-based for your institutional funds. And there's also scholarships that are run through CFNC that Central Carolina Community College participates in, things like the Golden Leaf Scholarship. And each one of those scholarships has different eligibility criteria that students have to meet in order to be eligible for those funds. Any questions so far? Okay, the first step is filling out the FAFSA application. And we won't go into a whole lot of detail about the FAFSA, but I did want you to get an overview of what happens when students go to the FAFSA website and they enter in their data, what happens to it, how long does it take to get to the school, and how long does it take for us to process that information. So the best way for students to go to fill out the FAFSA is to go to Federal Student Aid, use our website, or type in FAFSA.gov. There's a lot of websites out there that students can go through that entire process, filling out their FAFSA. At the end of the FAFSA process, they're going to say, okay, give me $80 and we'll process your FAFSA. Well, they're always going to take their money and they're never going to process their FAFSA. So every time we get the opportunity, we make sure we tell students to only go to legitimate websites, either use Federal Student Aid, the Central Carolina Community College's link on our financial aid webpage, or type in FAFSA.gov. The timeline to process the FAFSA is approximately 3 to 7 day notification from CPS. And CPS is the Central Processing System. That means when the student types in all their data, they hit enter, it goes to CPS, it goes through all of their criteria, and then at that point, they're going to get an email, which we we really want to scream a lot of the times, because as soon as the student hits submit, in 2 days, they're going to get an email that says, oh yeah, your financial aid is processed, call your school. Well, it takes 7 to 10 days before we have access to that information, generally. Most of the time we can get it before 7 to 10 days, but there's so many other things that are taking place in financial aid that we can't get to it in 3 to 4 days. We can normally get to it within 7 to 10 days. And that's kind of the guideline that we use to tell students, when their FAFSA is going to be available to the school. Once we get that information, there's things that we have to do. We've got to look at that data. It's a 2 to 4 week financial aid processing time if the student has been selected for verification on the long end of 4 weeks, and probably closer to the 1 to 2 weeks if they're not selected for verification. So there's the one word on this screen that we really try and get students to understand is that financial aid is truly a process. It's not an instantaneous gratification button that you have access to. So we really want to make sure that students understand that we are working as diligently as we can and as accurately as we can to process their financial aid information. We want them to come to school here. We definitely are not barrier setters. The internal financial aid process is complicated. What do we do with all that information? The whole financial aid process is not really that long, and it's not really that complicated. But it depends. If the student is selected for verification, it can get a little bit more in depth. And that's what I wanted to talk to you, or make sure that you understand that when a student is selected for verification, they are on that longer end of the 4 week period before their financial aid is processed. In order to be eligible for Title IV funds, there are some things that the criteria that the students have to meet. They have to be in a Title IV eligible program. They have to have an official high school transcript on file. Their application status has to be acceptable. Their satisfactory academic progress has to be met, and verification has to be completed. And this is going to be a topic that we'll talk about, at the end. Is satisfactory academic progress, because I think that's where a lot of questions come into play. Before a student can be awarded financial aid, they have to have an official high school transcript on file. And financial aid doesn't require the students to bring in the registrars, to the registrar a copy of the financial, or their high school transcript, and then we request another one. We actually get that information from the registrar. So we're not making the student go through any extra processes in order to be eligible for aid. And if a student, this is where, if you look to see this is a screen that we have access to. And I wanted to show this because I don't know what everybody has access to, but I can tell you that this is where we're getting our information from. If the student is in an eligible program, we would get it here on the SASM screen, and we would go through FASE to get to SASM. And this is where we look here to see if the student is in an eligible program. And so, that eligible program information comes from the most recently accepted ECAR report that the school is required to submit. So we don't make up, what's an eligible program. We have to go by what the school what the Department of Education said that the school can offer as a Title IV eligible program. Another thing is the high school transcript, which we talked about. And this application status has to be acceptable. I used the same screenshot here to show you these two things because it's on the same screen. But if the application status has to be acceptable, and I put that in quotes because what our acceptable is, they have to be admitted or moved to student. So that's acceptable for financial aid. It can't be blank. And there's a couple other things in there that it can't be, but I know admitted and moved to student, it can be, but it has to be populated. And if it's not, then the student won't be awarded either. So they can't go any further. We can look at their information all day, but we just can't move any further. In the high school transcript, we see at the bottom of the screen, it says Northwood High School, and the status is O, meaning official. If there's a W in there and it can be waived, but this is where we look at so we don't have to have the student come back in, bring in a copy of your high school transcript. So we're just we're asking for the same information, from the same student, and we really don't want to do that. It's just redundant work for them. But this is where we find the information if the student has a official high school transcript on file. That's where we look. And if you're looking to see if a student's meeting satisfactory academic progress, we would look here on the FASE screen, down here where it says status. This particular student is on suspension, meaning that the semester before they didn't meet SAP, so they're going to be suspended. Maybe not academically, but they're going to be suspended based on their financial aid. They're going to be they're not eligible for Title IV funds until this suspended status is moved to continue probation. Actually, that's where they would have to go, is just to continue probation. If it was satisfactory, there would be no issue for the student. And on this same screen, on the same FASE screen, you can see that this student has not been awarded, so they probably didn't come in the fall semester. They're applying for the spring semester, but they're suspended, so they're not going to get awarded any funds. Go ahead. What's your question?
None of us in here would have access to that screen. Is there any way that we would know that?
Without having access to FASE, no. Yeah, you can get read-only access to this, and I would encourage, if everyone's willing to go through minimal, training efforts to learn how to read these screens and what it contains and what it means, I would encourage everyone that is working in depth with students, especially you, in your office, to get access to this screen, because it tells you so much, just this screen right here. In fact, the last patch that we had, when it was loaded, it actually enhanced this screen a lot, because it used to only have one SAP status here. So you'd have to click back, and then when you clicked back, it was a nightmare, to try and see what is this, what's going on with this student. But now we've got 3 tabs here. We've got enhanced features up here, enhanced features here and here. So, and there's one thing on here that I don't know what it's going to be, but I think it's going to be populated with program information from the registrar's office, maybe. So, but this screen is just an invaluable tool for so many people on the campus. If they have access to it, we can teach you how to read this screen. It's not a problem at all. So I would ask, if you're interested in this, if this can help you, because it's not going to hurt you to see this.
So then, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
I'm not trying to bombard you, but
Don't bombard
so
me.
other people in here that don't have access to FASE, you would get that program information from SPRO, and you would get that high school information from IASU.
Okay.
So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. IASU, I am familiar with. I have used that recently. Go. Do you have a question?
A comment. I think most of that information on FASE was pulled to the finances tab in Aviso, especially, not all of it, of course.
Right.
The warning and suspension
Mm-hmm.
status, I know I've seen before.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's probably not as accurate as the information.
Yeah. Well, Aviso should be reading, from here. Yeah. But we have stepped into the Aviso realm, using it, more just in this past semester than I have, since I've been here. But, it's just one step, another resource for us to have, to help, students, to help serve students, better. So any collaboration that we can have, whatsoever, through the technology that's available and the people who are willing to train. And I certainly am willing to, to walk anybody through this process. If you have if you do get access, to this screen. It's not a secret, So it might be right now, but trust me, this is, it's not classified information. You have the same information, but I can just speak to this screen, so. This student here, let's see. Oh, you know what? I did want to mention one thing about the student's eligibility. We rely on Colleague to accurately manage students' accounts through the financial aid process. We follow the North Carolina Community College System's System Matter Experts best practices advice. And when I'm talking about this right now because what we had this semester was students who attended in the fall. We ran SAP, and they were satisfactory. We ran SAP, and then now they're not eligible for aid. So their satisfactory academic progress is suspended, but you still see dollars up here. And that's because they were, at the time we awarded them, we award them for fall, spring, not summer right now, but we award them for the whole academic year, which is fall, spring, and summer. So their attendance pattern would be fall, spring. We award them, they come to class, they don't do well, now they're on suspension, I still see money here. And that is typical. Most community colleges do not remove aid for the spring semester just because the student status is not satisfactory. And they don't do this because they want the student to see if you fill out the academic appeal and you have that processed, you can come to school. We're willing to pay for the Department of Education is willing to give you money for you to go to school if you meet SAP standards. So we want to leave that on here. You would see that, and I'll flip to the next screen. So if this student could be suspended here, and you'll still see an astronomical amount of money this lady's been awarded, and this is true. She has lots of scholarships. But you'll still see money here because we don't want to zero it out, because whenever financial aid, whenever our office manually touches dollars on that FASD screen that we looked at before, they gave you all that information, it says, the Colleague system says, you know more than I do. I'm never going to look at some of this information on the screen anymore. You must be really smart. Good luck. So we do not manually touch any dollars on a student's aid account. So, and we had lots of discussion because I think previously that might be what had happened before, and we're not doing that anymore because we are really trying to transition to only using the best practices for the North Carolina Community College system. I want to be this person, go to school. Okay, and in communications management is one of the best parts of Colleague that we use. And we use communication management for verification purposes, eligibility, and award notification. Some community colleges use the communication management module as like a storage place for all of their comment codes for every document that they send to students and every document that they get from students. So and anyone who has worked in Colleague knows that when you look at that screen, and I think we are going to in here just a minute, that it can get really jumbled. What financial aid office has made a decision per the recommendations from the System Matter Experts to only use communication management, specifically the CRI screen, and not dump all these communication codes in there that says, we sent Sally a letter that said you're not eligible for aid. We sent Sally a letter that said you're not eligible for aid. We sent Sally a letter that said you're not eligible for aid. Or we sent Sally a letter that says you need to fill out this document. And every time they get that document, that CRI screen is populated. We don't need all that information. we know that we're sending Sally through communications management that information out, and it's getting recorded elsewhere. What we are going to use communication management for is if a student has been selected for verification, as this one has. Yes, this student has been selected for verification, but it would not be a 7. This says her verification is complete. But normally it would be a 2. It would say CPS generated. I overlooked that. And in communications management, this is the screen that I was just referring to, that there's all these communication codes here. And some schools will have, every time they send a student a notification, or every time the student sends something, they'll make up a communication code and they'll put it in there and say, oh, Sally brought in a piece of paper that wasn't the right thing, so we can't receive it in. And then it'll have 2 or 3 more lines. But when you're looking at this screen, it's designed so you can look at it and say, this student is selected for verification, what do they need? So you quickly, at the top of this screen, if this student were missing documentation, it would be here, 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 here. Everything would be at the top. So if you have access, and we can actually see the communication codes is FA for financial aid, and I can see, or we can see, admissions communication codes, which I don't really think that we need to see them. It's nice sometimes, but when a financial aid staff member is looking at communications management and they're talking to a student on the phone, they want to see blank, blank, blank. You need the tax transcript, you need a statement of identity, and you need proof of emancipation or legalization or citizenship. And it's all going to be blank. It's going to be up here, and there's going to be an assigned date, and this will be blank. So in order to successfully tell a student and accurately tell a student what they're missing, this communication management screen needs to be as clean as it can possibly be. So that's why we've chosen not to just use that as a storage place for communication codes. There's other places that you can look, that we can look, to see what information has been given to the student. And the IHS screen is one of those. And here's the tab, Individual History. This actually keeps a record of all the notifications that sent to students through, as long as you send them through Colleague. You can use PCEX. If you send any information through that venue, then it's going to stamp those documents here. So if a student calls and says, I don't know if I've been awarded or not, tell me if I've been awarded. You get them on the phone and you say, oh yeah, you've been awarded, and we sent you the award notification on the 6th. They said, oh no, you didn't, I never got anything, or I've been selected for verification, but nobody told me. That happens a lot. Never, really. Always. And we can see that the student actually did get selected for verification. We've sent them a dog track letter here, and it records it every time it sends it out. So financial aid, these notifications that we send out to students are set up to where they can get sent immediately when we import the record. They get sent 30 days, then 60 days, then 90 days, and 120 days, and then they're done. So each time that information is sent out, it's stamped here, but it's not jumbled up here on this communication management code screen. So that's just another feature that we use in financial aid for notification. Satisfactory academic progress. According to Department of Education guidelines, students are required to maintain satisfactory academic progress, which means they have to be a 2.0 grade point average, a 67% completion rate, and they have to complete their program within 150% of their published I always mess that up. The published link of the program. So this one is the hardest one to explain to students. And the key to this is the word cumulative. Some schools have, this is one of the biggest audit findings for schools is when satisfactory academic progress is calculated on term, which means only fall, only spring, only summer. Federal regulations require that SAP is calculated cumulatively from the time that the student enters your school until the time that they leave. And that's how our system is set up right now, is to cumulatively calculate these grade point averages, the completion rates, and the completion rate and the 150% completion rate. Any questions about that? No? Okay, to get to the 150% completion rate, everybody understands that if business administration is 72 credit hours to complete, if you're counseling a student, they say, how many credit hours can I take before I max out on my financial aid eligibility? You would take that 72, multiply it by 150%, and that's the total amount of credits that student can take before they're not eligible for aid anymore, and that includes remedials. And that's what's killing us right now, is that remedial word. So students are struggling now because every time a student takes remedial class and they have to repeat it, it's going against their completion rate. It might not be affecting, it isn't affecting their grade point average, but it is affecting their completion rate. And institutionally, we don't have control over that. We have to go by the federal guidelines. And that's why we really have got to get together in some way to get more of these students through their DMAs and DREs, the first time. Because when they get to the back of their program, when they're getting ready to finish, they're having to fill out a SAP appeal because they've reached 150%. They've taken 80 or 79 classes, 79 credit hours towards their 81 maximum. So they can't even take any more classes. So at that point, the school lets students fill out a SAP appeal form to continue on, but it sets up a barrier for that student, because a student who has to take a lot of DMA classes, remedial classes, DMA is in my mind as it's, that's the only class, but remedial classes, they're already overcoming so many different obstacles, and this is just another one. So we, as campus-wide, we have got to get together and figure out, a way, to help these students with this 150%, completion when, when their remedial level is so high. Anybody have any questions about SAP? You've got to have a question.
My only concern is that you're saying that they wait till the end. My concern is how are they waiting till the end when they couldn't possibly take certain classes without completing some of those?
Well, they do. They're required to, when they take the test, they're required to take so many remedial classes. They get over that hump. They've taken, 30 plus hours of remedial credits, and they're working in their program of study.
Okay.
They get toward the end of the program of study, and they still have 2 semesters to complete because they've taken 3 semesters of remedials.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's not that they left the remedials to the...
Right, oh yeah. You're not gonna leave them alone. They're gonna have to get through those first.
Okay.
And then, they're in their program, and then at the end, they have no financial aid left. So now, now we're saying, not only do you have to take, DRE for the 4th time, you're gonna take all of your classes, you're getting ready to, to get into your last semester, but now you don't have any aid to pay for your classes. So
aid will allow them to take it more than one time?
yes, if a student can take a class as many times as it takes to complete and receive financial aid for it. But what's going to catch them is the 150% completion rate here. And that was recently, not recently, I want to say 2011, 10 or 11, the Department of Education has realized that there are students, and I have seen students' records, that they are lifetime career college students, that they've been here for 6-7 years. They haven't graduated out of one associate's degree program. And so the Department of Education said, hey, you know, we've got to do something about it. Let's say 150% of the published length of the program, and then you're done. So, but the good thing about it is the financial aid office has set up a mechanism for these students. So if they are working towards their last semester or last 2 semesters, then they have had a history of developmental challenges, then you can fill out the SAP appeal and continue on to put in that student to graduation. So yeah, so not all college, I can't imagine one that doesn't, but I'm sure there's probably one that doesn't have a really good SAP policy and that really helps students, you know, follow through graduation, and we do. And one of the things that, you know, that we are taking into consideration is working more closely with the student success coaches for the students who are in mourning right now. Instead of waiting until we run SAP at the end of the semester and say, oh, guess what? You know, 30 students that were on mourning who we've paid no attention to during the semester are now suspended. They're not going to receive aid because their SAP status is bad. Now what? So then we've got this influx of financial aid SAP appeals coming in, and we can't get to them in time. They're getting dropped from classes because they have no aid. They register for classes, and it just sets up a snowball of misery, you know, for the student, you know, that really, the completing students who really want to come back to school. So we do have a lot of things, you know, that we're talking about in financial aid to help students successfully complete their program.
Julie, how does that impact a student that's been in one program for, say, 2 semesters and then changed their program of study?
The 150% is going to catch them, and especially with nursing students. Whenever we talk to students at high school nights or new student orientation, you know, we mention that if you don't know what you want to do, and it's, you know, with your college experience, make sure that what you do complete is transfer classes, because you don't know at that time if you're going to continue on. So, and a lot of students do come. They come, they work a semester, they work 2 semesters, and they can't get into the program that they want. Or they realize that this is just not for me, I'm just not cut out for it, and they want to change programs. If they change programs from a program that's academically relative, you know, to what they're in, like accounting to business administration, then all those classes that are in both programs, they won't count against them. So they're the students that are most likely to go ahead and graduate and not have to use the SAP appeal process. The students that it does matter is the students who are in a nursing program, and they're kind of in that limbo program. They're taking classes and they're taking classes waiting to get into the program. And then when they finally get into the program, you know, they've got, 25 or even maybe 30 classes yet to complete before they're done? Well, shoot, they've already maxed out their financial aid because they've used all their financial aid eligibility sitting and waiting. And we get a lot of students that say, well, what am I supposed to do? Just sit out? Well, you have the option to sit out. You have the option to attend, you know, get a degree in something, you know, work towards something if that's what you want to do. But just know that when you get towards the end of your nursing, program, that you may have to pay out of pocket, you know, for some of your classes. So that it happens a lot with nursing, and with students who are in early childhood education, and then they go to cosmetology. Well, that has nothing to do, you know, neither one has nothing to do with each other. So none of those classes, you know, they don't transfer over. So the students actually taking a giant step back, starting all over, and they're already 2 semesters in using, towards their 150%, completion, the program completion.
So now if they complete a program and they start another program, that does not still apply?
It does still apply. All of those, they don't get a clean slate. That all the classes that transfer over into that program are calculated, and then they kind of, they don't start over, but it counts towards that program. So if they have a degree, chances are they're not going to get through, if it's like accounting and business administration, they could probably get through another degree without sitting down and doing the math. But if they're a accounting major and now they're going into early childhood education because they want to open up their own business, probably not going to happen. They're not going to get all the way through that early childhood education program. Yep. Good questions. Any other questions?
I have a question about the 67% cumulative completion rate.
Okay.
I have students that come to me and they'll say, Mr. I want to drop this class. And I'll say, well, you're on financial aid.
Mhm.
You need to be careful in assuming to drop this class that you're not going to negatively impact
Mhm.
your ability to get aid. My understanding was they had to complete 67% of the classes that they had registered for that semester. But cumulative means something different than that.
Cumulative means something very different than that.
Yes.
Cumulative term-based, that would be true, 67% term-based.
Right.
Cumulatively is all the classes that you've taken at Central Carolina Community College. So if a student is on morning, and they're on morning right now, they're attending classes, and if they drop any of their classes during, this semester, they're gonna go to suspension. They're not gonna be eligible for aid next semester. And sometimes, here's something that, you really gotta think about. When you have students who are on suspension, they filed an appeal, and the appeal says, complete all of your classes, and we'll continue on your financial aid. You'll be able to continue on appeal. Well, the student has dropped so many classes, their completion rate is so low that it's going to take them 2 or 3 semesters in order to build that 67% cumulative rate back up to be satisfactory. And that's the way the SAP appeal process is designed to work, is that you're satisfactory, then you're going to be warning, and then you're going to be suspension. So you're going to be suspended. If you appeal, you're going to go on continued probation. If you do well during the term, that's when we do look at term, is if you have to be 2.0 for the term and 100% completion rate for the term, you'll stay on continued probation. But if you get a C or below, if you drop below a C or you drop any classes, then you're going to be terminated from financial aid. And our current policy right now does not state that you can pay for a semester out of pocket and then come back and apply for financial aid. Our policy does not state that. Our policy says that after you've been terminated, you have to meet 2.0, the federal standards, 2.0, 67% in order for us to offer financial aid to you again. So the student does have the option to pay out of pocket for 1 or several semesters, whatever it takes to bring that grade point average back up to 2.0, 67%. But our current policy right now does not allow students to just say, well, that's fine, I'm just going to pay out of pocket, I'm going to take a class, ACA 122, and now I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna apply for financial aid. So our policy does not, permit that right now. It should never permit it. Go ahead.
Coursework from other institutions is also.
It is. Yep, coursework from other institutions can average into your completion rate.
Now, these
Not
things
the
will
grade
follow,
point.
everything they do here will follow them.
Yes.
to their
Mhm.
four-year university.
Yep. Any other questions? All classes affect SAP. So everything that the student takes affects the student's satisfactory academic progress. And I I've listed our office hours here. And on the PowerPoint presentation that Deja will post, I'll list references and cite my work. So, because there's some great places that you guys can go. You know, you don't have to be a financial aid administrator, you know, to learn and get some basic information about, you know, to counsel, you know, students, because we do it all the time. You know, we don't want to, you know, if we can answer a simple question, you know, that's not crossing that line, you know, into somebody else's realm, you know, we'll do it, you know, but not, you know, if a student really wants to know about their financial aid, we're the place to send them. You know, if a student wants to know about their charges, we're going to answer as many questions as we can, send them to the business office. Registrar's office the same way. So we don't have a one-stop shop set here, but we sure do, you know, want to, you know, we sure want to make sure that, you know, we help the student in as many ways as we can when they do call. So just know, Registrar's office, that every time a student calls me and they say, oh, this is Mary Lou and I want to talk about my financial aid, I ask her name and I want to identify and I say, what's your address? So if they have no address, or if I see 123 bad address, I say, you know what? When we get done, you're going to have to talk to the Registrar's office. So, you know, just to kind of, you know, network back and forth. So you know that we are, you know, looking out for you guys, and we are, you know, we do, you know, try and do things in the financial aid office that might seem a little out of our spot, but you know, we're just trying to help. So, and in closing, that was all I have from my PowerPoint presentation. But in closing, I want you to open up. If you're in pairs of 2, and I've paired you guys together, and you guys together. Let's see, no, you 2, you, and I don't know everybody's name, I'm sorry. You guys, and so looks like you're going to get your own package. Okay, so I want you to open up your package that I gave you. And so you got one? You need one, okay. Open up your package I gave you. Think about the story that we talked about first. So this is a wonderful, go ahead and open your package.
I'm in love.
Listen, think about what
I didn't get one.
I'm going to give you one right here. Right here. I want to think about what you're going to do with
And
it.
Julie, on the other campus in Harnan, did you have someone, did you have a package up front?
I do. There is a package up front.
Jennifer, there is a package up front. You can feel free to get one of those.
All right. Thank you. And when you open, I want you to think about what my story was, and decide what you're going to do with your cookie. So that's your cookie. You can do whatever you want with it. You can break it in half and share it. You can keep it all for yourself. Go ahead.
Does Mount Rangeley have office hours on the Pittsburgh campus?
We do not have office hours on the Pittsburgh campus. Nope, on Lewitton. Go ahead.
Okay, from an advisor standpoint of this whole mess.
Mess.
And I mean that in the nicest way.
Yep, I
because
get it. I
it's-
took it the nicest way.
It's so confusing for a lot of us to have to be able to talk to a student and not really be the person that does financial aid and have to coordinate 5 people to get an answer for something. But one of the questions that we always talk about in meetings all the time, and it happens all the time, is, you know, what do you say to the student when you're deciding about having to give them a W and having to drop them out of the class? And, you know, they're saying, gee, I don't understand, you know, if you'd have given me an extra week, I could have made this up, I maybe could have done this and I wouldn't have lost my. Tell me how we can do a better job of maybe understanding where those cutoffs are so that we're not doing the most damage to the student and maybe counseling them a little bit better so that when I send out that email that says, you know what, you're on financial aid, and if you don't really get with the program here and start working with your student advisor and your student success coach, you're gonna have a lot bigger problems than getting a bad grade.
So your
Like,
question.
you're not gonna be able to have money to pay to finish.
So if a student is working on probation, well, if the student is satisfactory, if they have not made a habit of dropping their classes, it's not going to affect them. They're still, you know, if they have a whole lot of experience behind them
Mhm.
and they've successfully completed, they're gonna get through that next semester if they drop a class.
Okay.
It's not gonna help, it's not gonna hurt them. There is an unadvertised, 60% cutoff date. If students stay in their classes at the 60%, and they have to stay in at least one class throughout the whole semester. And that has to be in class, actively participating throughout the whole semester. And they won't owe a balance back to the school. But if it's a matter of dropping the student and not being eligible for financial aid, most of the time it's not an issue unless they're already on warning or already on continued probation.
Because they've done it.
Right, because they've done it before, many times before,
Mhm.
or just a lot the last time. Yeah.
What about students who are doing super well at CCCC, that they come here from another university where they've been through from 3 semesters in a row? Is there any way of knowing that without access to their transcripts or them disclosing it?
No, and we don't collect that information.
Okay, just curious.
So transcripts would be the way to go, to try and counsel them, Well, thank you for letting me navigate you through the waters of financial aid and share your cookies.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.